This is Chase Unruh, and I am part of Professor Kennedy's Communications 1250 class in the summer semester of 2025, and I will be presenting on Elaboration Likelihood Model. Have you ever been persuaded by a friend, an advertisement, or a politician, and later learned that your friend was untruthful, that you barely used the product you purchased, or that the politician knowingly misled you for his or her own gain? This is the power of persuasion. And sometimes we can be persuaded to do things that we would rather not do. Similar to Chunk in the Goonies, when Mouth persuades him to do the truffle shuffle to gain entrance into Mikey's house. But what is persuasion? And why is it important to elaboration likelihood theory? Well, persuasion is the act or process or an instance of persuading. And the verb persuade simply moves to mean by argument, entreaty, or expostulation to a belief, position, or course of action. Persuasion can cause us to act in ways that we already act, in ways that we normally would not, and even influence our beliefs. One more word that often comes up in this presentation is elaboration. In the context of elaboration likelihood model, also referred to as simply ELM, elaboration means an individual's willingness to think about a topic, whatever that topic may be. Just about anyone can be persuasive. Sometimes this can be beneficial, and other times it can be detrimental. Whether or not we are persuaded is significantly determined by our knowledge or even our ignorance of a subject, as well as our perception of the person commanding our attention. Elaboration likelihood model was developed in 1980 by Richard E. Petty and John T. Cacioppo. ELM is a predictive model stating that people process messages with different degrees of elaboration. The degree to which they think about a topic can be used to predict whether or not they can be persuaded and the lasting effects of their subsequent behavior. ELM proposes two pathways that recipients use to process information: the central route and the peripheral route. These predict the likelihood that someone will be persuaded based on the degree of their elaboration and the attention that they are willing to devote to the topic at hand. The central route is logic-driven and involves the recipient thinking critically about the message they receive. The second pathway is called the peripheral route, and it involves, among other characteristics, the recipient's interest in the message, their general impressions of the message, and their perception of the messenger. In addition to these two pathways, we should also consider some factors that can affect our willingness to elaborate. First, we are generally motivated to hold correct attitudes. However, sometimes life happens and our circumstances affect our ability to dedicate attention to an issue. Also, if we do not perceive the message to be relevant to us, we are less likely to pay attention to it. Sometimes even the messages themselves can lead us to think objectively about a topic, or they can simply confirm biases that we already possess. Our motivation at the time can also influence whether or not we engage or disengage with a certain topic, and our attitudes toward a topic are affected differently depending on whether we approach the message via the central route or the peripheral route. Elaboration likelihood model is extremely applicable to interpersonal communication because individuals, businesses, and even governments can use it as a way to tailor their ideas to their friends, customers, and even their citizens respectively for the purpose of persuading them. If the audience is more likely to invest time and thought into an issue, the message will be interpreted very differently when compared to an audience willing to simply accept the message based on their previous views, perception of the messenger, or even their interest in the subject. This particular slide is causing me quite a bit of trouble in terms of being able to pull up this video. So I posted the clip as a link. I'm not sure if you'll need to type that into a browser, but I would pause briefly to view the video. I I want to use this clip to illustrate central and peripheral routes. It's a clip from January 29th, 2025, during which the White House press secretary explains the Trump administration's cultural shift in the way that they define illegal immigrants as criminals. Please pause this presentation, take a look at this YouTube clip, and we'll continue with the next slide. In this slide, I want to demonstrate the difference between central and peripheral routes. And recall that the central route is logic driven and involves the recipient thinking critically about the message they receive. The peripheral route involves many different characteristics, but in this instance, we're going to be focusing on the recipient's interest in the message, their general impression, and their perception of the messenger. Based on the clip that we just saw, someone who is considering whether or not illegal immigrants are criminals might ask the following questions in our central route column. Does breaking a law make someone a criminal? Does it necessarily make them a criminal? They might also ask, what is the difference between a criminal case and a civil case at the federal level? They might question, can an administration arrest illegal immigrants using the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which says that we can, or the government can, but it is in times of war. So that might lead them on to ask the follow-up question, are we at war? The peripheral route in receiving this message that the White House press secretary delivered, a person might think that illegal immigration doesn't actually affect me or anyone I know, and so this isn't actually worthy of my attention. They might think that it makes sense that breaking a law makes someone a criminal and agree. They might already think that illegal immigrants should be deported simply because they're here illegally. Or they might even think that they trust President Trump to do the right thing, or a combination of any of those. The last slide was a little difficult to get through. The last two slides were. However, although I chose a difficult topic to discuss, I chose it because I think it is worthy of discussion and that ELM demonstrates different ways that people can consider the issue of illegal immigration. However, ELM can be applied to various different situations. And in this slide, I'd like to just consider a few aspects or a few lingering questions of ELM. Is this model realistic? I would say yes, it absolutely is. We do this all the time, from purchasing, in our consuming habits, even to the way in which we vote, even in the way that we interact with our friends. Is this practical? I would say it absolutely is practical, from our interpersonal communication with friends. Companies can use this in their advertisements, and persons of authority can use this in the way that they deliver messages, as we just saw. It also can have positive effects. It can persuade message recipients to act in ways and consider ideas that maybe they didn't consider beforehand. In conclusion, these are my own thoughts on elaboration likelihood model. On the one hand, ELM can be used to present persuasive arguments in various fields, including education, public health, and business ethics. On the other hand, ELM can be used to manipulate people into buying certain products, reinforcing biases, and acting in ways that harm their own self-interest. However, I do think the model is very thoughtful, very insightful, and I do find it very interesting that at least some other examples that I'm unable to go into because of the length of this presentation, it is predictive regarding certain aspects of interpersonal communication and behavior and persuasion. Thank you.